If you're prepping for 2026 and you want to know what links, Easter eggs, lo-fi beats, and gaming streams, well, if you create content and if you're a musician, or if you're someone that works with them, or if you're a fan of them, this is the conversation for you. In that, I've met a researcher who really knows what's going on in both the music industry and the creator economy and the gaming streaming world and the social media platforms that we all live and exist on. And the reason why I had this conversation was because I really want to empower music fans, but above all, musicians, with the knowledge of how they can cut through and connect on the current platforms that we live on. I think that economically things are more challenging than they've ever been. And if you're a music fan trying to celebrate the music you love, it is really difficult to understand how you can post about the music you love online, because there's copyright takedowns, there's loads of warnings if you post music that you don't own the rights to. If you've got a monetized channel, that you could worry that you're going to be completely demonetized by using music that's available that you love, that you're only maybe using a few seconds of just to illustrate how good it is. And I think that if you were a young guy or a young girl getting into gaming, streaming yourself playing games online, you would not face any of the same problems. If you were a movie nerd loving the films that you love, you would probably struggle to get as many issues that you would as a music fan, because you know that the trailer's out there and you can probably get away with using bits of that. So in this conversation with Hanna Kahlert, she speaks to me all about what she does at MIDiA Research, a company who specialize in insights, analytics, and deep research into how the entertainment industry works. They focus on music, or at least that's how I know them best, through all the great work they've done trying to make sense of the mess and the muddle, which is the music industry, which is kind of what this podcast is all about too. So without further ado, this is the Drown in Sound podcast, brought to you in partnership with Cobuzz. And if you head to drowningsound.org/playlists, you can find a playlist that accompanies this series of our podcast. I'm Sean Adams, your host, and let's get into the conversation I had with Hanna in late 2025 at Shaw Studios in London. What are the problems that face musicians and creators? I'm joined today by someone who's literally just been studying this. The differences in a good way and a bad way. Welcome to the Drown in Sound podcast, Hanna.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
What have you been studying? What's the kind of like, I saw your LinkedIn post. I was like, yes, someone has finally written the thing. And I was like, okay, I'm just having to confess to actually reading a LinkedIn post and enjoying it.
Oh my goodness. I know. Trust me, I have to write them all the time. Yeah, I mean, I kind of started the LinkedIn post a little bit cheeky, like, this is the problem, this is the problem with the music industry. But one of the things that I study at the moment, I mean, I work with MIDiA Research, so we're a research and consulting firm in digital entertainment, largely music, but we like to take on the bigger picture. So we look at more broadly the creator economy. And it's very interesting to me when we look at the problems that creators face, specifically artists, actually, when we do our artist surveys. Some of their top problems are time, because they're spending so much time on social media, our discovery because of social media algorithms. Um, and then following that, you have all of the other issues with rights, monetization, all these sorts of things. And so largely their daily lives are fairly similar to any other type of online creator.
Anyone running any online business.
Basically, yeah. It's all got to be like content. Like
We're all working for Zuckerberg and Google.
Zuckerberg and TikTok.
Yeah. Which is Larry Ellison now, I guess. We're technically all working for Larry Ellison.
No, I don't think they bought.
Not finished yet.
No, it's not finished. It's the ongoing drama that is never gonna. I don't know. We'll see.
Accuracy is important. Though maybe at the time this has gone out, maybe he would have done.
Maybe it will have.
So one of the big things, I manage musicians and I've run a label, and obviously being a journalist, you have to promote your stuff online. You have to sometimes be cringe on your main feed, and like all of the things which musicians face on a daily basis. Like I ran 6 music social media channels for 6 years, 4 years, sorry. Say the word 6 twice in a sentence, you're going to get it wrong. And I worked with the composer Max Richter running some of his channels for a year as well. So I've been sort of all different sides of the challenges of trying to get stuff out there. I'm also friends with quite a lot of content creators, and the YouTubers I know that do like Jimmy the Giant and people that have got like 30, 40 million views on their YouTube channels. They face a lot of the similar things that musicians do, but they don't have to go on tour.
Yes.
They don't have to worry too much about copyright.
Yeah.
They are mostly quite self-sufficient, almost as self-sufficient as self-producing artists. And so I guess like I'd be curious of some of the takeaways. I really liked how you compared like 2 young boys. One wants to make videos about gaming and one wants to put their guitars, like
Yeah.
play music with guitars. Like what were some of the things that you found with your research?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially with the rise of the independent musician, which has been pretty much explosive, especially since COVID, um, is reflective of this changing dynamic you have with your audiences as a creator. You know, you used to have to rely on bigger institutions that had relationships with distribution channels, like who's the person who has a recording studio, who's the person who has a contact to get you on air. And now, you know, you have a lot of programs. You can do it in your bedroom. You can immediately just click share, and then suddenly potentially millions of people can see it on TikTok. So a lot of the old challenges no longer exist, and obviously new challenges emerge. But what it's like to be an independent artist has changed a lot. So it's become more like being any other kind of creator. And you kind of see this on the industry side as well, especially with the rise of like label services deals, independent labels kind of offering more one off engagements, retention of rights is more common. And they kind of start to function a little bit more like creator talent agencies, like UTA or the Creator Talent Association or Digital Creator Association, where you work with a creator and you kind of take a bit of a load off. Like we'll do your editing for you, or we'll do your, you know, your promotion, or we'll manage your audience engagement or something like that, which are time challenge needs and often stressors because, you know, you have a lot of most creators are in it for like the love of the game,
Yeah.
for the art basically. And I mean, you do see, I think it's also there's a good reason to conflate music artists with creators, which is that they often behave the same way.
And now the industry started calling musicians music creators rather than
Music create
musicians.
Yeah, and I think there is, like, a distinction in the broader creator industry. I was speaking to someone who works at one of these creator agencies, and they kind of break them out into 3 camps. So you have your talent who's just using social or, digital distribution as kind of their, like, way of getting stuff out. You have storytellers who are kind of using it as their medium, but it's about the story rather than a craft. So talent would be like a music artist or a visual artist or an actor or someone.
Mm.
And then you have your storytellers who are kind of using this as their medium. So that's a lot of YouTubers. And then you have your influencers who are basically the ones who like, I'm on holiday, look at
Yeah.
my like beautiful pictures. And when you kind of break it down that way, you can see that there are differences. And when you're looking to work with creators, you know, you can't just look at, oh, this one went viral, therefore we have to sponsor them. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, what are they actually working with? Like, where are they going to go? Um,
Did you
so
find that many of the music industry was working with creators? Because like I worked on some political campaigns, and one of our big things was getting we worked on this campaign called Stop the Tories, which was about tactical voting. So our mission was if someone was making a video being critical of the government, to say, and you do know at the general election, if you vote tactically, we can get rid of them, because often the margins of victory were quite small. So people like there's this guy called Femi, Supertansky, Marina Perkis, all these people, we just gave them a really simple, and I was like, why don't we do this with album campaigns? But there's not the same like payoff at the end of most videos. It's not like you can approach someone and go, oh, you make videos about windsurfing. Do you want to talk about our music, which would sound perfect when you're windsurfing? It's like, it's a bit of an odd fit, but I'm
yeah.
curious if you've seen examples of labels working with creators.
Um, I have not. I think because the artists themselves are expected to kind of do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's
and
a lot the artist is expected to do.
yeah, it's a huge. I mean, when we do our creator surveys and our interviews, like a lot of them complain, "I have to spend so much time making content for social media. I don't have enough time to make music. I got into this because I wanted to make music. This doesn't make sense to me anymore." But it's kind of like a catch-22, right? Like, if you wanna be out there, you need to make the content.
And it's
Uh
also if you're an artist that's relying on selling merch, selling tickets, transitioning people from one platform to another, like Spotify or Patreon or Bandcamp,
Yeah.
like all of that relies on, like, I guess one of the things, like, this is a podcast for music fans to try and understand, like, what are the musicians that we love up against?
Yeah.
And I think that we hear a lot about the different crisis in music, but if someone's working a full-time job, touring, doing everything else, like the act of being a content creator as well, and like learning the skills of shooting,
Yeah.
editing,
Yeah.
sounds, like it's a whole other skill set,
Yeah.
which, yeah, there are some great young artists that upskill, that watch YouTube tutorials and get good at it. But on the whole, it's like it's a big challenge for most musicians. And I think that we hear a lot of people going, "Oh, why are the tickets like £5 more than they used to be?" Or "Why is this piece of merch like 25 quid?" And I think that when you start to see the amount of work artists put in, you start to appreciate the value of everything. Like the extra 15 to 20 minutes just to send a package because of Brexit is like
Yeah, yeah,
something the average music fan is not aware of.
yeah, for sure.
So what are some of the things which you think the musicians could benefit from learning from the creators you've looked at?
Um, well, I think it's more of an industry learning. I think a lot of music creators are kind of on like they understand the situation because they're living it on a daily basis. A lot of it is the industry kind of struggling to keep up with that. You have I mean, I think the point of the LinkedIn post is that as a person filming your gaming habits, monetization is way easier, way faster, and often a lot higher return versus when you're a music artist putting stuff online. Like, you've got payouts here, there, the other thing. You've got so many different
Well,
agencies
even if
that
you did a Twitch stream and played your own song,
yeah,
you'd be demonetized.
yeah. It's
Like,
actually crazy.
and like the amount of times I've had to spend an extra hour, like the artist has uploaded their video and we thought it was whitelisted, but it was whitelisted for the label channel and not the artist channel. And like all of this stuff is like really complicated.
Yeah,
And I mean, it shouldn't be, but there's obvious reasons why it is.
yeah.
But if you're sitting and playing a really popular video game, the video game maker isn't asking for royalty.
Yeah, it's because the video game creators first of all, they have very good monetization, so they don't need to worry about
Yeah.
the
45
copyright
to
stuff.
60 pounds for a game, and
Yeah, right?
versus
Like, the
versus the points of a penny for a stream.
yeah, so they obviously have more to work with, so they can afford to be more forgiving. Um, but, I mean, I think the complexity of the music system and the monetization when it comes to artists is one of those weird dynamics of the industry where we kind of do things the way we do them because we feel like we've always done them. So it's this very complicated system of rights that are protective, especially when it comes to AI kind of asking us to, oh, let's ignore copyright. We can just train on everything. Obviously, not great. But there is a inherent complexity in a system where the current model of digital distribution is so simple. And that doesn't really like add up necessarily. And it's about rethinking like, okay, what are other ways we can monetize? What are other ways we can do this that the reliance on streams and gatekeeping becomes at least less prohibitive.
This episode of the Drown in Sound podcast is presented in partnership with Cobuzz, the platform that pays artists 4 times more than the industry standard, that has high quality audio, that has human curation, which, as a human curator, is something that I truly value over the kind of algo slop that you get on some platforms. You can really hear the difference. I know lots of places talk about the audio qualities, and as soon as I moved across, it sort of felt like I was rediscovering music, which is one of the platform's slogans. If you're worried about your playlists, you can use Soundiz. It's a really good tool that's part of the sign up process when you join Cobuzz. It just transfers everything across. If you'd like a free trial of this platform that's independently owned and made for music enthusiasts, head to drownedinsound.org/playlists, where you can hear not only our playlists, but get a free trial. You can also find these details in the show notes to this episode. And now back to this episode of the Drone and Sound podcast, brought to you in partnership with Cobuzz.
Maybe it's a little bit more philosophical, but a lot of the way the music industry runs now, we feel like, oh, this is how we have to do it because this is the way it's always worked. But the recorded music industry as it exists is only like 80 to 100 years old. And before that, music was a participative thing that was a public good. It was something that you did in spaces as a community. And it wasn't really something that, you would consider a commodity. It was just part of culture and being a normal person.
I think relevant to your company name, I think it was almost like the newspaper as well.
Yeah.
Like folk songs would share the kind of like big stories and news of the day. And
Yeah.
not that it was a form of journalism, but
It's,
you
I
could
mean, a lot of
follow
like
the legends and myths and all sorts.
oral history is
Yeah.
largely based in music, right? And then someone came along and they were like, oh, sick, we can record this and package it and sell it to millions of people. Which kind of changed it. So it became a very like one-way direction. And the like there's always been kind of new music, new genres have always come the other way. So starting in like community grassroots spaces, like house music started in houses. Like jungle started in community centers that used to have recording studios.
I thought you were about to say it started in jungles then.
No, the name doesn't really match up on that one. House is a little bit better.
Yeah. It was like breakbeat and breakdancing all sort of came from the same kind of like spaces. And
it's
like,
in like,
and it's like when you think about garage rock, it's like that. Some of these genre names are quite literal.
They're literally like came from the garages. And weirdly, we're in a position where streaming almost, and this like digitalization and COVID especially, where everyone went to their bedrooms. So now it's bedroom culture. And it's immediately like create, distribute, but it's also become almost that old way of being interactive and part of a broader like fabric of nothing ever being quite finished, because people will upload versions, tracks, people like audiences will edit. There are people who will like, oh, you should do like this first, and then they'll do like a riff, and then the artist will go, oh my god, that's really cool. So it's actually become a very communicative process again, and I think that's one of the reasons that it can be quite hard, because the industry structures are built around this one-way distribution model. And we've kind of gone back to like pre-recorded industry, where it's like nothing's really final recorded, everything's like part of this iterative process.
Which leads me perfectly into my next question. I saw a talk that you did online. You did it in a real space, but I saw it online. And you were talking about lean through audiences, which I guess is different to leaning in. And I think at the time it was just after the Kanye record had come out, where you could kind of like play with the player. And the like, I've always wondered, like I did some work with the guys from, well, it's actually now Imogen Heap that runs Endless, where you can sit and make music together in real time. And it's a really, like, for the people that are doing it, it's like jamming, but with like a pocket synth and thing that you can plug your gear in. And it's really exciting as a kind of non-finished format that you can just join in with. And with Drone and Sound, we started an online community 25 years ago. And like the idea that you can be online and be present and have conversations has always been there. And we've seen things like, was it called Turntable, where you could like listen to Spotify together? But it doesn't seem like there's been the same, like, there's going to be a generation of Minecraft kids growing up, and like music is not the same. They can't like deconstruct it and reconstruct it. And so what are some of, firstly, could you explain what you meant by lean through? Because I thought it was a really, I mean, maybe you didn't, I don't know if you made it up or whether it's something you'd come across. And then like, were there any other examples, and like maybe what the barriers are too? Sorry, that's 3 questions in one.
3 questions. Okay. So we argued over that terminology for a while, so I think we did come up with it. Basically, you have, the idea is there's 3 kinds of consumption. You have lean back, which is I'm chilling and listening to my music, whatever. Like that's lean back. And especially with streaming, you'd also conflate that with like passive listening, maybe in the background while doing something else, which is by and large like the biggest way people listen to music streaming. Which is a pro and a con, because you can multitask, which means they're not as time competitive, but also like you have less concentration.
I think it's also the same with radio as well, isn't it? It's like, it's often there as a companion rather than as
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have just switched some of their radio listening to that, and I
Yeah.
think makes sense. I mean, the amount of hours I must have spent with headphones in, not fully presently listening to the music that was playing.
Yeah. And I mean, there's different. I think even within that, there's a little bit of nuance. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but like
It's a
the
podcast. It's what tangents are for.
that's true actually. That's you can tell I'm not a podcast listener. Uh, there's like um so passive listening. You can think of lean back as like I've put on a record. I'm leaning back and listening to the record. Or I've put something on in the background and I'm messing about. And then you have this like constant barrage of discovery that Spotify is like really incentivizing right now. And I know this because of like my own Spotify Wrapped, which last year I listened to like 5,600 songs. My top artist made up like 3% of my listening, which is crazy. I mean, I love music. I love this artist. They're onto Loop. They're like a really great like genre mix. I've been to their shows. I've bought their vinyl. Like clearly a fan, but I spent like, that's 3.5% of my listening time was dedicated to my top artists. That's insane. And the rest of them I probably couldn't remember. And then it also becomes an issue with monetization where like if I'm listening to like 3,000 artists a year, I cannot afford as a normal human being to pay each of them what, they arguably are due because they're contributing to my life and that of like thousands if not millions of other people.
The counter to that is you wouldn't be able to afford to buy all of that music unless you were very wealthy.
Yeah, that's true, right? It's well, I remember as a kid we used to go to the library and borrow
Yeah.
CDs and then we'd rip the CDs. So like there've always been ways. There were
Yeah.
mixtapes back in, whatever.
The amount of CDs that I bought, returned, taped, bought, returned, taped. Like, oh, sorry, it didn't sound like I expected. The one argument you could get away with, I worked in a record shop for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and people would come in and say, yeah, I really liked the single, but the rest of the album wasn't very good, and they were allowed to exchange the record.
Wow.
And that was a valid reason to
Yeah,
bring it back.
yeah.
Often I bought it as a gift for someone and they've already got it.
Yeah.
Was also the other way. Anyway, I don't know if that's still relevant, but I just remember like the amount of music I must have owned.
Yeah.
But it's like the wealthy probably do go out and pay it forward so the rest of us can do it. Anyway, sorry, that's just the tangent. But so I guess like so you've got your lean back.
So that's your
and,
lean.
And then
back.
what's the second one?
So
The
the
kind of
second one
active
is
and
I think we settled on like lean in.
yeah.
And this is like, oh, I've liked it. I've added it to a playlist. I've like left a little comment. I've like sent it to someone. Which is engagement, right? So arguably better than a view, if you're looking just at the metrics. But even that becomes quite like passive, like you kind of just do it all the time. And when you speak to artists or managers or whatever, they go, yeah, well, we had this video or this reel or something or this TikTok and it performed really well and we had like all of these likes and all of these comments and then we tried to sell tickets to a show and we couldn't fill the venue and we had to cancel. And it's like, okay, well, there's clearly a metrics problem there that we need to look at and address.
And then one of the big ones being that audience was around the world and
Yeah.
your show was in one place.
Also, like maybe you just liked the video.
Yeah.
Maybe you were just scrolling and you were like, this is a pleasant content experience.
Thank you for
click,
entertaining me for 2 minutes.
Thank you for entertaining me for 2 minutes. And there is a role that the platforms have to play in this, especially, a platform like TikTok that has such a unique brand and identity and, experience. People are TikTok loyal. So you see like its value is you scroll through and you can see millions of creators from around the world every day, but you're very unlikely to see the same one more than once.
Yeah.
So
unless you like, comment, DM the video to someone else, and,
yeah, it's like
and complete the video.
Yeah.
And then you might see them again.
Yeah. Yeah, you literally.
Yeah.
You have to hit like 5 points of engagement or something like that. Which I mean, valid, right? It is a way of judging it, but it does mean that there's a struggle when, managers or artists or whomever look at a video and they're going, yeah, like, okay, well, number high, good, but we can't get people to take the next step. And that's what lean through kind of is.
So just before we move on from that, do you think it's always been like that with like one hit wonders and things? Like, for instance, I know that OK Go exist.
Yeah.
And I know that there was a song of theirs I really liked. Like, I know the New Radicals had like one big song.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of more contemporary examples, but I can't think of many. Like, I'm sure there's loads of people that have heard the Pink Pantheress like section of the segment of the song
Yeah.
and might not have even ever heard the full song, but they
Yeah.
really like that segment.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. It's just that everyone could be a one-hit wonder now.
Yeah.
Like anyone, literally.
Yeah.
Um,
With any type of content.
yeah,
Like,
with anything.
So
And
then,
it's like there's a mix of this. I mean, I think it's kind of funny. I was lucky enough to be invited to the Brit Awards by one of our clients. So I was like, chilling there, listening to the artists who were performing, and I was really falling into the trap of like, I don't know this person, I don't know this song, and then it'd be like, oh, I've heard this bit on TikTok,
yeah.
and I'm like, I am part of the problem. But it's also because they'll see, okay, this performed really well, therefore the artist must be big, and um kind of my latest report actually looks a little bit at this, where you have some platforms that are really good for reach and getting a song out there, but the trap you can fall into is that song becomes associated with a different context. So you're like, oh, this is the TikTok song. And then when it chases you into the grocery store and it starts playing on the radio, you go, oh my God, why has this followed me into the grocery store? Like, I've had that happen and it's really annoying.
Yeah, like I can't imagine Jess Glynn has picked up that many fans from the Jet2 holiday thing.
Yeah, no,
It was
probably.
Jess Glynn, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
Like,
it's just Lynn. Great sound, by the way.
Yeah.
Apparently that's the song of the summer
Yeah.
2025, which says a lot about where we're at right now. But, um, but yeah, so it can be kind of easy to fall into that trap, and what you really need to look for is more like just stronger communities, however small they may be, quality of metric over quantity of metric. And that's where lean through kind of comes in, which is that just clicking a like is no longer really enough to gauge relationship with the artist. Is someone actually a fan, or did they just like that video or that sound or whatever? I feel like I've said whatever like too many times. I need
It's
to
all right.
pull back the American a little bit.
You're allowed to be American.
I'm allowed to be American. I'm allowed to be
This podcast is listened to around the world. It's not just Brits with a stiff upper lip.
Cool.
Um,
No pressure.
Well, that leads me on to one other thing that's like related to the kind of lean through listeners. Was there was a talk I saw that you did about superfans,
Yeah.
and I think one of the things you said is, "Are superfans real?"
Yeah.
Which made me think of the birds aren't real meme that goes around the internet. So I guess like, do you think those people that are like the lean through fans are actually the super fans that people are thinking about?
Yeah. So when I kind of ask the question, are super fans real? I like to ask it because everyone loves to be like, oh my God, we have such a problem with like monetizing and making artists money. And people will sit around in their multi-million-dollar offices and be like, how do we make artists more money? Guys, I think the call is coming from inside the house.
Yeah. You're sitting with a basement full of records. Maybe you should try and get some people to buy them.
But yeah, so the answer is, oh, super fans are the solution. But who is a super fan? How do you measure what a super fan is? How do you pick them out of a crowd? And the answer is it kind of depends on what you're looking for. I think I break it down in terms of you can measure people as how big of a fan they are by how much money they spend, how much time they spend, or how active they are in the fan community or related to the music.
Time is sometimes a better metric than money because you're measuring the wealth of a fan. And like, if you're a really big music fan, you might be really into like 20 or 30 acts.
Yeah.
And the same way, so like if you're really into journalism, you might be into 20 or 30 blogs or
Yeah.
newsletters, but you can't afford to support all of them every month.
Yeah.
And I think that there's definitely a confusion a lot of the time between the financial return on music and the like time investment, because I think there's such a different way of looking at it. And it's like, I'm always up for the fans that want to spend lots of time chatting and like having their own community, or like with the Hayley Williams campaign, the amount of time those fans must have spent making videos with their theories. And it was like such a beautiful campaign to follow. Like, just like, I mean, the record's amazing, but hearing fans like deconstruct lines that like, I've just realized she quotes like a movie in every single song and I can only work out 3 of them. And then you got the TikTok full of people going, isn't this a line from like What's Eating Gilbert Grape? And like, anyway, that's a sidebar. But I think that really, to me, like shows the artist that understands what being a fan is about, because I think the my favorite musicians tend to be the ones that are also obsessed with music.
Yep.
And like, you can tell in like the merch they make and the fact that they often are seen wearing other people's merch because they actually go out and get stuff. And
Yeah, they know. They're like,
yeah,
I would want this, so
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
sell this. And I mean, it's definitely it's really bad to like gatekeep fandoms by money. And interestingly enough, games kind of nailed this pretty quickly because of all the pushback they got when they had like pay to improve or pay to progress. And fans kicked off and they were like, that's not fair. I have spent like thousands of hours on this game and you're telling me this like nobody who just bought the thing yesterday and like paid you is now like has higher stats than me. Like that's not cool. So yeah, it's like you can't really, when you gatekeep things financially, it really loses like the oomph that makes it real and that people actually care about. Because when it becomes money, it's a transactional relationship, and transactional relationships don't really have a lot of emotions related to them. It's just business, right? Um, and time as well, just as a pure metric of like how long someone spent just watching the video or how many times it's been streamed can be tricky, because if you're just on a per stream basis and that's your only concern, like sure, okay, that can be good. But you also have like lo-fi hip hop study girl. How many people are like super fans of lo-fi hip hop study girl? I mean, people like it. Like probably there are some super fans. But it's still kind of different. So what you want is people who will put in the effort to like chase down the Easter eggs, which is something Taylor Swift is really good at. She's also very good at getting them to spend money. Hence I think it was like the average spend to go see the Eras tour was like £800 or something, which is insane.
It's insane to give a billionaire that much of your money as well. It's not like it's not like, oh, I'm super rich, so there's a £25 ticket if you're
Yeah.
going to a food bank. You
Yeah.
can still come to it's like there's none of that.
It was like, oh, you should actually buy tickets and come to like fly halfway across the
Yeah.
world and chase me on tour. It's nuts.
Yeah. And I think also there's a lot of interconnected things there. But I think when you look at how she launched the album, it felt like a QVC presentation.
Yeah.
Like on her boyfriend's podcast. It was like, it just felt like, here's my product.
Yeah. This last one has felt like,
yeah, she's maybe
you
done the
know,
Icarus and gone a bit too close to the sun.
a little bit. Honestly, tinfoil hat theory. I was like so convinced that after she got married that she was gonna like do the Eras tour, make bank, get married, and just like go off grid for a
Yeah.
little while, and then like come back for the Eras tour revival
Yeah.
in like 5 to 10 years and make like twice as much money.
Mm.
And instead she went and dropped like an album that even her fans, who are normally rabid online, were like, I kind of wish I hadn't pre-bought like all 5 versions of this. And you're like, that is not something you would ever expect
Yeah.
a fan to say. So there is like overplaying your hand as well and being
Yeah.
like really getting too much into the money thing.
But it really shows the music matters.
And the music does matter. And it's the community as well, like the fandom, and being, I mean, anyone who's a fan of live music knows that it's like about being in the room with other people who are like sharing the same experience with you and knowing you have something in common with them, even if it's just appreciation in that moment.
So are superfans real?
Superfans are real, but I think as a music fan who loves the culture of music and going to events and seeing artists, and I find it kind of reductive to frame it that way as like you either are a super fan or you're not a super fan.
I found the industry taking on as a term was very strange. It's like
it's a search for a magic silver bullet that will fix the music industry's woes and suddenly magically pull money out of nowhere. And it's like, well,
just like NFTs were going to do.
Yeah, I know. Like everyone's looking for a solution. It's like maybe the solution is just making it a more sustainable process, because, you know, at the moment most live tours break even at best, right? Like, you know, the costs are so high associated with it. You know, like maybe we should look at fixing those things so that what people are already doing is enough.
Hi there, it's Emma here. I'm gatecrashing the podcast to quickly tell you about the Drowned in Sound newsletter. Every Wednesday, I invite myself into your inbox, with permission, of course, to share opinion writing and resources, tell you about cool things that you should be involved in within the world of music, activism, etc. I also bring track of the week And a little bit of hopeful news for you, because we all know that the news cycle can be grim at the best of times. Drowned in Sound newsletter every Wednesday in your inbox. Sign up now.
So was there anything you found when researching creators? And I know it's something, it's not just one piece of work you've done, it's quite an ongoing project for you. Like, one of my big things has always been, like, I'm not just a fan of artists, I'm a fan of often like an entire genre or entire movement, or like sometimes I'll be into loads of bands that all just happen to be from the same place.
Yeah.
Like, there was definitely a moment when Saddle Creek arrived and I was like, why do I like everything on this record label? And they're almost all from Omaha. And I was like, that's really cool. Um,
Omaha really pulling out of the
yeah.
bag there.
And I think it's that thing, like, you discover Bright Eyes and it's like, yeah, and then I've discovered all these other artists. And like, there's people I know that like, they go to Download every year and they're like Greed Kerrang every week or Metal Hammer. And
Yeah.
like, there's a certain type of fan that's more into a genre. Like, I don't know, if you're a regular Resident Advisor reader, you're probably going to be into certain type of acts, but you then have to become like a consumer of each artist, not of the genre. Is there anything you saw when looking at creators where there's like for instance, I know there's like collaborative podcasts and things where sometimes you can just support for creators by supporting that podcast rather than individually. Was there anything like that that you saw when you were researching?
I mean, we've been doing a lot of work around scenes, basically. And I think what's kind of behind that is artists used to be based in a context, kind of inherently, like what venues you performed at, the aesthetic, like what you wore, like these things all used to be more like lifestyle defining almost, like who you hang out with, what you look like. And some of them have retained it. I mean, one of my close friends like manages some metal bands, is like really into metal. And you can spot, like I've gone to a few gigs and you can spot them like down the road. You're like,
Yeah.
that's where it is, because everyone's got the uniform on, right?
Yeah.
Like the Doc Martens, the Battle Vest, right? And so that's still got this like sense of context and place and time and community. Um, and a lot of artists now are kind of removed from that because it's all just TikTok. And so that it's like, oh, we'll focus on the artist, focus on the artist, focus on the artist. But we've actually lost the sense of context that was quite intrinsic before. So when you look at scenes, that's kind of what that is, right? It's like building that context back in a or rediscovering that context in a digital space. So you have like again, gaming comes out as a good example. I'll use League of Legends as this one, but it's got, Imagine Dragons, a lot of K-pop artists. They have a TV show, they have a couple of games, they have like this whole thing around it. They have a lot of creators involved. They have YouTube creators and Twitch streamers hosting their tournaments as like official partners. Like they don't need sports broadcasters on a network. They've got Twitch streamers who are doing this kind of thing. So it's this whole picture. And then as a fan, you might be just a fan of the artist. You might be just a fan of the TV show. You might be just a fan of this Twitch streamer's personality because they cover a couple of different games. And all of these people together create this like variated audience that are all like, that's your audience base. That's the culture you're creating.
So like a festival, I guess. Like, I guess we've short-circuited in the industry by you get a fee to play at a festival. And like, I guess they get a fee to perform and be at those events. And I guess like one of the big things I've noticed is the more fragmented things have become and siloed and individualized, the more people are talking about ideas which like collective like substacks where there's like, I think there's a few like Flaming Hydra where I think there's like 30 different writers.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, but you've basically just invented a magazine.
Yeah. There's a lot of reinventing the wheel going on.
There's a lot of Twitch streams. I'm like, this is just talk radio on a video.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, but people are seeing them as a different format and going, this is the future of this. And it's like, no, this is just the past done on a digital platform.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of musicians are going to need to figure out going forwards what those shifts are, because, and I think also for fans, like if you're a fan of an artist, do you want to spend 6 hours watching the equivalent of Hassan Piker for music? Probably not.
Yeah.
Do you want a quick 15-minute guide to like, this is what's out this week that you might want to listen to? Or like, and I think that one of the big things I've noticed is the struggle for anyone that's a music fan to share the music they like online outside of here's a link to my playlist,
Yeah.
which is going to get buried because links take you off a platform. So no one,
Yeah.
and it's like, and I've seen these amazing content creators on TikTok making videos and they can use the sounds on TikTok.
Yeah.
As soon as you move on to YouTube, it becomes like Justin Hawkins, Anthony Fantano, and Rick Beato all have posted videos this year about how they've either been demonetized, had copyright infringement issues
Yeah.
with their accounts. And I was thinking back to when you were talking about those kind of like two young boys. One wants to be a gaming streamer and one wants to be a guitarist. And the guitarist, if they did a cover, they might like play a bit of the song that they're doing a cover of, and suddenly their channel's
Yeah.
kind of in the sin bin and taken offline. Like, do you think the music industry, from the research you're doing, is like really falling behind because of the way in which kind of IP and copyright is enforced? Like, it feels to
Mm.
me like maybe that's a leading question, but
Yeah.
the thing that I find is, for instance, if I wanted to, like the first version of this podcast we did in 2005, we played music on it.
Yeah.
And I had to stop because after chasing the PRS to find out how we pay a royalty, like a hospital radio station, we couldn't.
Yeah.
And the fees they introduced were going to bankrupt us.
Yeah.
We were like, there's absolutely no way we can make a podcast and
Yeah.
pay you that amount of money.
Yeah.
Because they were treating it like a compilation album each episode.
Yeah.
So I guess that was 2005. Things haven't changed that much. Is there anything you've seen that the music industry could learn from gaming and from creators? So it's a very long question.
It is a very long question. I think there is a lot to learn in terms of how you approach ownership. I want to be careful, like not to particularly diss anyone in particular.
Well, put it this way: if I wanted to pay £5 right now to pay an artist to play 30 seconds of their song so we could talk about it,
Yeah.
like I can't easily do that.
Yeah.
But I can go on Epidemic Sound, which is a sound library where artists have to opt out of certain collection societies. It's like
God.
quite a complicated.
Literally, like even the mention of this kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? You just dive into this rat's nest wormhole of like different complexities. You need like a music business master's degree
Yeah.
to understand even the barest minimum of what is going on. Which is obviously a problem when you have like teenagers making music in their rooms and distributing it, and then someone chases them and like, you didn't register with this PR, you didn't do
Yeah.
this, you didn't do that. Like, by the way, we've demonetized your video, and the kid's sitting there going, what? Like, but my friend just posted their video playing a
Yeah.
game, and they're completely fine. Why are you chasing me?
Mm. Like my friend Sophia Smith Gala has been making these videos about Rosalia on TikTok and Instagram, and they're brilliant. She's got a background in languages, and she worked in the BBC's religion department, and she was an opera singer. And she's a TikToker with a huge following. She was talking about putting them on YouTube, and I DM'd her going, you should be really careful if you're going to play any of the tracks because you're suddenly, she was like, like, and she's like very online, very clued up.
It's the copyright is that thing that no one even in the industry wants to touch with a 10-foot pole. You bring up copyright.
I don't understand it properly, and I said to you before this interview, how much do you?
I think,
and it's like,
I think the big secret is no one understands it properly except a handful of lawyers.
Yeah.
Everyone else is just going like, ugh. And then the problem is that so much is built on it. Like it's become such a critical problem, and it's one that most of us in our day-to-day do not understand properly because it's so complicated. And of course it's a legacy system that exists since like the 1700s because someone wrote on a napkin and was like, this guy's playing my piece, I want money, and there was a lawsuit, right? So you have like a 250-year-old case law that's dictating like the entire future of this industry.
But if the musician died 70 years ago, you can play it.
Yeah, exactly right. Like it's
so there's not very many recordings from 70 years ago that you can actually play. And if it's out of copyright, and if the artist is opted in to like Creative Commons, it's like the thing with all those sound libraries is often sound alikes.
Yeah.
So I could probably play something now that sounds like AC/DC.
Yeah.
And pay someone £4 for it.
Yeah.
But AC/DC won't get anything.
They won't get anything.
And I could probably type it into an AI and get it to spit something out.
Exactly.
And no one that's been sampled or been trained on.
Not to say, because especially when we talk about AI, it's like, oh, ignore copyright. Copyright's not important. Blah, blah, blah. Obviously, it is important because it is the one thing protecting creators right now from having all of their life's work taken and sold by a company that never had anything to do with it. Um, but the system is obviously too complex, and we fixate on like tiny uses, like some TikTok creator using a sound in a video that objectively probably promotes that artist, and we treat that as an infringement and then actually cut back on the willingness to do that, people's willingness to enter the industry. It feels a little bit sometimes like the industry's kind of like drowning in its own confusion, and meanwhile like the next generation of artists are moving on and just being like, I don't know what this is. And there are a new generation of companies. I've met a few startups who are trying to do like microsync or using these tools to like make the process a lot easier, so you don't have to go to 5 different places that you don't know where they exist or how you would even find out that they exist, and register independently and do all this different metadata stuff. Like simplifying these processes is really the end goal. It should
I
be the
think
end
I saw
goal.
one called Licked without an E, and
Mhm.
I think they're based in Brighton or somewhere. And but it's like depending on how many subscribers you have to your or views you have on your channel, you pay a different royalty rate.
Yeah.
But as soon as you stop paying them, you've got to take the video down with the track in it. I
I mean,
think
this
that's
is
how it works. It was
yeah.
like, so, and like I've seen like the stuff with Justin Hawkins and Rick Beato and Anthony Fantano. Like, there's a couple of videos, and I can link them on the end of this YouTube video if people are watching it there rather than listening. And I'll put it in the caption. They talked about videos that were like 3 or 4 years old, where they played like 10 seconds of a song with the artist on. I think it was like one of them was like one of the guys from the Eagles, and he was doing a talk through of his song, like sitting and playing it. And they played a bit of the studio recording for like 10 seconds, and the entire video was demonetized, taken down. But I think his entire channel was demonetized. And I was like, that's crazy. Anyway, thank you so much for answering all of my other questions. I've got 2 final questions for you. So, Drown in Sound turned 25 this year. So, we've been asking most of our guests and what music would be like 25 years from now. And I feel like you've had such you work at a company and I've followed some of your work, and I know that you've got a lot of thoughts. Like, what would you imagine music would be like in 2050? And that can be both optimistic and dystopian. If you want to do both, you can.
Oh, man. I mean, it's a tough question to answer because I think at the moment everyone's struggling with, like, what happened yesterday,
Yeah.
what's gonna happen tomorrow, um, much less, like, what's happening next year. I mean, this is something as a research company, we've noticed the questions we're getting are much more immediate. Like, 5, 10 years ago, our questions were like, "Oh, what's 2032 gonna look like? 35, like, what's in the next 20 years?" And now a lot of the questions are like, "Yo, what's happening tomorrow? Like, what's happening what that thing that happened yesterday, what does that mean for us? Like, do we have to change?"
I
So,
definitely have felt that with like some of the artists I work with have got records coming next year, and you're just like, I
yeah.
knew sort of what worked 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what worked 6 months ago. And like, I kind of know lots of things don't work. Yes, I can imagine that's
Yeah.
exactly what people are coming to.
And there's so many changes so quickly. This shift really, the COVID shift to social video was a massive one. Changed marketing, changed distribution. The rise of creator tools changed creation. And then, now we have AI, and there's this huge question about what does that mean for creative industries, for everyone really. I mean, it's a question of if this program can do the job, that's not just mass unemployment in the creative industries, because as an advertiser, do I pay for rights because it's a very complicated system or because it's expensive? Or do I pay a £5 subscription to Suno and make all of the music that I want? Um, a lot of that does hinge on copyright. Like, what do these programs have to pay out? I think I saw something again on LinkedIn. Embarrassing.
Mm.
Was reading something on LinkedIn. But I
We
think
could just say it was on the internet.
it's just
Maybe.
on the internet. Everything you
Yeah.
see on the internet is true.
Yeah.
But it's something like Suno's cost breakdown, the data training like the actual compute costs were like crazy high. And then the information they trained on was like, like many factors of zero, like less. So So they're not paying for the library at all. Now, you can ask whether or not AI is ever going to be financially sustainable because, like, we're talking I mean, if you look at, like, that NVIDIA OpenAI bubble, it's
Yeah.
literally a circle. They're just passing trillions of dollars around to each other.
I loved that. That was a graphic someone shared that I saw as well, and I'll put it on screen
It's
and
literally the
link
New
to it.
York Times article of, like,
Oh, was it
looking
the
at
New York
this. There's
Times?
one
Like,
it's one in the New
yeah,
I don't know if it's the only one, but there was one in the New York Times, and it's
yeah,
literally, like, all of these companies passing money in
yeah,
a circle, economy go, "Brr," but meanwhile, like, actual growth outside of that is
yeah.
0.1%, so we're looking at, like, also, like, a giant economic meltdown.
Well, it's also that thing when they talk about growth in the economy, and it's often just rich people passing money between different countries.
Yeah, and then you have okay, so artists are the ones creators are the ones, normal
Mm,
people are the ones actually making the stuff
yeah.
that is of value, and so you have a crisis kind of in music, but outside of music. I mean, this is a all-inclusive dynamic that is reflected kind of in every facet you look at.
And music's often the canary in the coal mine on a lot of these different
Artists
things. And
usually are, creators usually are, right?
I really
It's
liked that Anna Neal from CSAC, I heard her speaking at an event last year, and she just said, this is a human rights issue.
yeah,
Like, it's a workers' rights issue and it's a human rights issue. And it's like talking about copyright makes it sound complicated.
yeah,
And I think it's the exact same problem the climate movement's got. As
yeah,
soon as you say climate, it's complicated.
yeah,
Extreme weather, protecting nature feels a
yeah,
lot easier. Anyway,
yeah, yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
that's slight aside.
No, but
So yeah,
it's very much it's a similar discussion, right? It's a
yeah,
question of, like I mean, and I hate the, "Oh, it's democratized
mm,
creativity." Creativity's always been
yeah,
democratized. You
yeah,
can get a box of crayons and a piece of paper. Like, come
mm,
on. Like, you can hum, you
yeah,
can bang, like, kitchen spoons
yeah.
on a pot, right? Um, it's I think there was a good quote on this, and I'm gonna get it wrong, but it's the ability for capital to access the results of labor without labor being able to access the capital. It's a redistribution of wealth upwards, basically, which is, again, not a problem specific to AI. It's just exacerbating problems that already exist, as with all things.
Well,
Um,
sometimes it's almost like these things have to become a metaphor to make sense of, oh, so this person's making loads of money from this.
yeah,
And that, like, because there's so many other things in our lives, we don't think about the fact that we're giving money to someone who's using essentially like our natural resources for energy, or like you're paying, like, we say, oh, our net zero targets. And you're like, well, actually, we've offshored it all to China.
yeah,
And it's like you start to realize that sometimes it's really easy for people to understand. If Elton John and Dua Lipa
yeah,
are saying, you are taking music by musicians like me
yeah,
and creating new music that sounds just like me, that's got nothing to do with me, that feels pretty easy for most people to understand.
yeah,
Me saying all of, like, I can get it to spit out a review that's written like in the style of Drowning Sound
yeah,
because it's scraped all of Drowning Sound
yeah,
and it knows what our vague tone of voice was, which is,
yeah,
I mean, I would struggle to figure out what that was, but it's like it's able to reproduce
yeah,
a work that's not that dissimilar.
yeah,
And I think that no one is going to get upset that, like, well, you're just someone posting on the internet.
yeah,
It's like, because people feel like that's in the public library almost of like,
yeah, because it's out there. I mean, it's the relationship that people have with ownership now. I mean, growing up, especially in the digital generation, where like everything's online, you can kind of pirate anything you want, you can kind of like remix whatever. So I think almost to bring it back to the question of like what can music learn, there's a difference between like commercial I mean it's basically like commercial use versus casual use. But
yeah.
then because casual use can become commercial use because of how easy distribution
Mm.
has become, it becomes like super complicated.
Well, there's
But
also the arguments around like critique is like, like if you're taking a paragraph from a book, that's different to reproducing the entire book.
yeah, it's different from like slightly rewriting it and
Yeah.
being like, "Oh, it's mine."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's it's called fan fiction, and even
Mm.
fan fiction writers
Yeah.
give attribution. And
Yeah.
usually, unless if they want to monetize, they have to change all the
I
characters'
feel
names.
like I should get you back and we should just do this question because I feel like the answer is we don't know what's going to be happening 5 months from now, not let
Yeah,
alone 25 years from now.
it's a really hard question. I mean, there's just so many. It's really hard to like look at the news cycle and not feel like vaguely overwhelmed and
Yeah.
kind of want to scream. I have a lot of floor time these days, especially looking at like the American news cycle. You're like,
Yeah.
ah. And I mean that has ramifications on entertainment, right? Like what's going to happen with TikTok? What's going to happen with these tech companies? What's going to happen with copyright? What's going to happen with consumer regulations and corporate regulations on consumer goods? Like all of these things, how are these cards going to fall? major question. Then you have like the technology, does it continue to develop? Does AI become the magic wand that everyone loves to tout that it will? Or is it realistically confined by, it's basically trained on all the data that exists so far? There's no new data that's not tainted by AI stuff, so it starts cannibalizing itself. And in order to improve, it requires an exponentially higher amount of energy and processing power and water, and they're already running into barriers, right? Like they're nowhere near profitability. And so prices are going to have to skyrocket if they're ever going to come even close to it. We're talking factors of trillions, not even billions, which is insane to me, but whatever. Um, and yet it's this like almost cult-esque, like, but it'll be magic and it will do. And it's like, personally, I like to see results before I invest like my entire life savings into something. And that's basically what these economies are kind of doing right now, which is terrifying.
One thing that's given me a little bit of hope is I spoke to someone who's working on something that can reverse engineer and work out the source of
Hmm.
some of what the AI is spitting out. And I think there's obviously loads of complications of that, like musicology studies of
Yeah.
like the Ed Sheeran case and things like that. It's
Yeah.
all really
Yeah.
complicated, but it's almost like, what will our Wally be like that goes through the debris of AI and figures out, you took my thing and you've used it and now you've
Yeah.
discarded it.
I
Because
think,
often the people making stuff out of AI are not even going to profit from it. They're actually
yeah,
just creating slop and noise
and
that we've all got
noise.
to battle.
I think what's very interesting about it, and maybe the less dystopian take, near term dystopian, but like long term, actually weirdly not. Um, the reliability of being able to tell what's AI and what's not AI and where stuff comes from is both incredibly difficult and increasingly difficult, because one of the things that uh, like AI, like what a program can do best is trick itself. If it's making what it thinks is the most human version of a thing, it's gonna be very hard for it to tell the difference. But also, as this stuff just proliferates, it becomes less meaningful. Like at the end of the day, who cares? One person listened to something once. That's happening like millions of times every second, every day among billions of people, right? Um, we can't really I find it hard. I find when I, like, scroll through the internet, I alternate through this thought process of, like, I don't know if I believe that. That seems unrealistic. Haha, that's funny, but, like, whatever. And, like, I don't know if that's true, or, like, "Oh, I'm gonna forget about that." So it's become less enjoyable and less, like, meaningful at all. You're just like, all of this is slop. None of it could be true. And what it means is that people are turning less to digital. I've done some work on analog revival, which is really interesting. And while it's not reducing quantity of time spent on digital platforms yet, we are seeing an increase in like people's attention being paid to things that feel real, that they can like hold in their hands, that they can be out, that they can actually own, and some rights thing isn't gonna change, and they're gonna lose access despite having paid,
Mm.
like, £10 a month for years.
The second season of this podcast was pretty much trying to make sure my theory makes sense that magazines are going to have their vinyl moment.
Yeah,
And I keep seeing all these different things like these zines are blown up, and like I keep meeting people that are like, oh, I've got my own zine. Like, you've got
yeah,
your own zine, like, and it's really interesting, especially in activist circles, how much bigger zines have
yeah.
become. And like, I think there's something in that. I think we're a few years away
I
still,
think, yeah,
but
definitely a few years away, but you can kind of feel it accelerating. Because when I did this work, it was a year and a half ago or 2 years
mm.
ago. So there's
I guess also as a researcher, like doing work that can be trusted,
yeah,
like, and I think also with journalists, like the fake news media nonsense that we hear spewed out, there is a lot of
yeah,
fake media. Like, there's like, the day we record this, UK budget's being announced. There's a whole generation of people that are in the top 1% whose family members work in our media and own our media, and they are going to have a very different view
yeah,
around what their interpretation of the budget is, because they've not really got skin in the game. They don't know anyone who's
yeah,
get on the two-child benefit cap or anything like that. And I think that's a whole other layer that the internet sort of unlocked more working class voices.
yeah.
But sorry, I realize this is a tangent and
No,
nothing to
no,
do with.
because it's interesting because when we look at so AI's eating everything, your distinction point for you guys, for us as well, is our commitment to like this is impartial. We've checked our notes. We've done like actual surveys. This is not synthetic data. Like this is not AI has spit out this analysis for you, which there's so many, digital outlets now that it's just AI, right? So that's what makes you stand out is like doing the work, putting in the effort. This is something quality,
The
arg
humanity of
the
it.
humanity of it, and arguably like that handcrafted,
Mm.
um, handcrafted appeal. But what's interesting is if you want to stay competitive, you have to almost remove yourself from being able to be scraped and like monetized by somebody else, especially if this continues. So what I think is going to happen is we're gonna see like already kind of seeing it where people are retreating into like corners of the internet, like pockets. So you have more meaningful interaction happening in niche places like Discord or Substack, which on a weekly active user level, very low,
Yeah.
but very meaningful interactions, right? So you can really, if you have an artist like Fred again, uses Discord to do like fan parties worldwide, worked great. Substack, it's one of the highest rates of people actually paying money to an individual creator, having a creator subscription. Um, Users are retreating to direct messages. Like Instagram CEO kind of said they've been seeing that, but you also see people on like WhatsApp groups and using that as like their means of communicating with each other rather than these broadcast channels that no longer really work to connect with your network. So you're seeing this shift from like front page of internet is where everything is that you need to see to front page of internet is a hot mess. And I'm gonna go to my little like
Create my own front page.
bubbles, like little safe spaces, whatever.
Mm.
That's called like the dark forest
Yeah.
theory.
I
Um,
had Yancey from Meta Label on the podcast, who's one of the Dark Forest Collective, who I
yeah,
think wrote the first essay that went
yeah,
viral.
yeah, yeah.
Yancey was the co-founder of Kickstarter, and that episode, Yancey and I ended up talking about the Beastie Boys and the Royal Society. So one last question, because I feel like we could both talk for about 3 hours.
About 3 hours.
And I know that Joe Rogan does podcasts that long, but didn't like, grabbing you on your lunch break.
Yeah, the final
Yeah,
like, tagline, the TLDR. Internet's gonna fragment into big public place that's a hot mess versus like small gated communities, which means reliable stuff is gonna be behind paywalls. Not everyone can afford everything. You're gonna see like more fragmentation into like different, I don't know, like along geographic lines because of regulation, also along like cultural lines, like I believe in this thing or I like this artist or whatever. You live in your own little version of the internet. And then I think people are actually going to return back to analog and real life stuff just to feel a little bit more grounded in reality and connected
yeah.
to things because the digital space is becoming crazy.
I'm loving all the conversations about new third spaces
Mm.
because people are now living at home a lot more. They're craving having somewhere to go and hang.
Yeah, basically.
And a lot of like venues could benefit from like open an hour earlier and like have video games or something so that
Yeah.
rather than a support band, people can just hang out and talk to their friends and be
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
collective space. And maybe this dovetails into what we were just discussing because you switched to being hopeful towards the end of that. If you had the 600 million that Daniel Ek invested in Helsing, which is money extracted from the music industry, is why I've been asking this question this year. What would you spend it on to address some of the things that we've been discussing?
Oh, if only I had
Or if you could
600
spend on whatever you want. I mean, go wild.
anything. Buy a yacht. No, I would
Yeah.
absolutely not buy a yacht.
You might be able to get more than one yacht for 600 million euros.
Yeah, I don't really know how
Yeah.
money that big
Yeah.
feels
I know.
so surreal. I don't know what I would do with it.
It's like
Um,
I'd get really nice headphones, then what would I get?
I'd
And it's
get
like I was like, that's
really
a really small
oh,
percentage.
maybe I'd go on holiday.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, if I had $600 million and I wanted to actually make a difference in the music industry or just more generally, I would not invest it in anything that demands an immediate return on investment. If you're doing it just for money's sake, you're not really going to make a difference. You're just going to make more money. Um, I think talking about third spaces, especially, not only are they important for people, but even if you're putting business hat on, it's important for building the culture that eventually becomes valuable, meaningful. You need to give people time to be bad at stuff for them to be good at stuff. You need to give them spaces where they can actually get together and fool around largely. You've got your 10,000 hours theory, and that's how the Beatles got really good is all those months they spent in Hamburg. Um, and so I would probably invest it in like community spaces like studios. I mean, I think really weird fact I found out that a lot of like community centers in London used to have recording studios in them that were free for like local kids to access. I feel like that would be huge if you just make these spaces for young people to get together in a place that's not their bedroom and just like throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
So the thing that you don't know is this is probably going to be the last episode of this season. The first episode of this season was an interview with the CEO of Youth Music.
Yeah.
And they literally go out there and raise money to create these spaces for young people. So
Yeah.
accidentally on purpose, full circle.
Wow.
It's not an Ouroboros where the snake's eating his own tail, but it's not far off. Thank you so much for your time, Hannah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, that conversation was probably the one I expected, but also completely not the one I expected. Hannah was fantastic. I followed her online for a while, as I mentioned in the interview, and it was the first time I met her. We went quite in at the deep end, and I really liked that she's able to process so much of what's going on in the creator economy and with social media platforms and how that all impacts artists, but also how it impacts us as fans. Because the ways in which artists reach us now, the ways we discover music, are very reliant on algorithmic platforms. And unless we fight for human curation, we're going to just increasingly see that this shift that's going on in culture, where those that have the money to drive the algorithms can cut through. And we see that with political donations, with the parties that have got huge, huge sums, are able to compete far more ably and agilely. And we also see that with major label artists, where you can have an incredible tune, but if you've not got huge sums of money, it's quite hard to get it to cut through. I made a few other notes here. Simplifying everything is crucial was one of them. And by that, I mean intellectual property, copyright, the ways in which everything works. Because as a fan, I don't know, it just feels like that scene of Krusty the Clown stepping on rakes. If you just want to just post about the music you like online sometimes, whether you're a massive content creator or whether you're just a fan just trying to put stuff out there, it shouldn't be as hard as it is to support and be part of the community of the music you like. I think that we need to find new ways of making copyright make sense, and it probably needs like global awareness campaigns, because I think it's going to be very difficult once AI has fully gripped everything, if it hasn't already, for people to understand that the work's involved in training artificial intelligence. And actually, what I mean by training it is the source material, the sounds and the samples and the songwriting and the lyricism and all the other things that go into what makes a great song is all there in the data. And I think that if you go back to the interview I did with Haley Bosher, she really talked about intellectual property and how it works and what it is. And I think that there's something quite broken, and the industry does sort of need to educate everyone. And I'm assuming if you've got as far as listening to this podcast, you're probably not someone that needs that educating. But I think that generally music is really struggling because, like in this conversation, you can post up gaming videos and there's no real problem. You can take an image of a famous person and put a meme on it and no one's really going to have an issue with it. The photographer probably does quietly in the background, but they're unable to police it and to reach out to every single person that's used their photo. Same with if someone chopped up this podcast, I would struggle to find them having done it. And I think that's pretty bad for all of us as a culture and a society, especially when we're meant to have this intelligent technology, which should be going out there and chasing it down for you. I think a lot of those things are quite terrifying and worrying. Anyway, not to be dystopian in what was a quite hopeful and hopefully provocative conversation, or at least agitating some thoughts conversation, because I think the research that Hanna does is really powerful and really impactful. This was obviously quite a deep piece of research that Hanna's done, but it's actually part of, if you look her up online, you will see that it's very consistent with all the other work she does, this piece of research. So yeah, thanks to Hanna for her time. And thanks you for all listening to my What Will Music Be Like in 2050 kind of series of conversations. I know it's not been the core of the chat, but I think as a kind of consistent conversation prompt and something that when I'm asking people to prep, I send them those questions in advance. They can think about them a little bit. They're like, how would you spend the huge sums which were spent on either Helsing or Joe Rogan, and the what will music be like in 2050 question? And I think that it's also led me to like pick guests that I think can answer that question. And I'd be curious what their answer is. So that's about as far as it's been as a kind of theme for this year. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Josh Craggs for producing this episode. And I think this is me signing off for 2025. We will have lots coming in 2026. And I hope that this episode is useful to musicians and creators and music fans trying to understand how we are going to get through another year of tech dystopia, but the joys of music. I've been Sean Adams, your host of the Drown in Sound podcast. We are here to empower music fans. You've been you. I'll see you next time. Bye.